Every neighborhood has its heartbeat, its quiet anchor. For the vibrant, close-knit community of Cedarwood Heights in Brooklyn, that heartbeat was undeniably the Harmony House Community Center. Nestled amidst rows of brownstones and bustling bodegas, it wasn't just a building, it was a sanctuary, a second home for countless families navigating the labyrinth of urban life. From after-school programs echoing with children's laughter to a small, bustling food pantry, Harmony House was where hope found its address, and at the very core of this haven was Esther May Rollins. Esther May. The name itself whispered of comfort and strength. At 75, her smile could warm the coldest room, yet her eyes, often crinkling at the corners, carried the subtle weight of a life well lived, but also well fought. For over 4 decades, she had dedicated her life to Harmony House, tirelessly working with its affordable housing programs, ensuring that dignity wasn't a luxury, but a right. She wasn't paid for much of it, not in dollars and cents, but in the knowing glances of grateful parents and the shy smiles of children who finally had a stable roof over their heads. Her own apartment, small and meticulously neat, was a testament to her ordered life, filled with cherished photos of her late daughter and son-in-law, taken too soon. But the most prominent, the one that caught the morning light just so, was of her grandson, Samuel "Sam" Rollins. Sam, an 8-year-old boy soon to turn 9, with eyes that seemed to absorb the world around him. He wasn't the loudest kid on the block, nor the one chasing soccer balls down the street. Sam was an observer, quiet, with an old soul that seemed to hum in harmony with his grandmother's gentle rhythm. You'd often find him beside Esther May, a silent shadow, helping her carry overflowing grocery bags up the 3 flights of stairs, or perched on a worn armchair, watching her meticulously go through stacks of paperwork, his young mind cataloguing her every careful movement. Their bond was a tapestry woven from shared silence, deep understanding, and an unspoken promise. Esther May was his world, the steady sun in his young universe after the devastating loss of his parents. Then the storm hit. Not a gentle rain, but a thunderclap that ripped through the heart of Cedarwood Heights, echoing with disbelief and betrayal. The news flashed across local channels, whispered in hushed tones on street corners. Esther May Rollins, the selfless pillar of Harmony House, arrested for embezzling a staggering $2,300,000, 0 cents, from the very program she had devoted her life to. The headlines screamed, "Community Angel" or "Master Thief." The whispers quickly turned to shouts, some laced with cynicism. Just another one trying to get over. The initial media frenzy painted her as a cunning, deceitful old woman who had exploited the very people she claimed to help. For Sam, it was as if the ground had vanished beneath his feet. Confusion morphed into a searing conviction. His grandmother? Steal? It was an absurdity so profound it stung. He had lived with his grandmother since his parents died in an accident 2 years ago. This wasn't just about guilt or innocence. It was about the shattering of a sacred trust, the betrayal of an entire community's faith, and for Sam, it was a deeply personal wound. He remembered the long hours Esther May spent, the late nights poring over budgets, the tired sighs when funds were scarce. He remembered her sacrificing her own comfort for others. This wasn't just an accusation, it was a character assassination, a public execution of the woman who was his everything. A specific moment seared itself into his memory. He was at the local corner store picking up milk when he overheard 2 men, their voices low but laced with harsh judgment. "See? Told you. Always the poor, uneducated black women, always looking for a handout. Then they bite the hand that feeds them." The words, loaded with insidious prejudice, hit Sam like a physical blow. They weren't just talking about his grandmother. They were talking about them, about their community, about his future. In that instant, something shifted within him. A fierce, protective fire ignited, burning away the confusion, leaving behind a scorching resolve. They wouldn't just sit back and let this happen. He would fight. He had to. Esther May, despite her humble upbringing, had always possessed an insatiable hunger for knowledge. She saw it not just as power, but as a shield, a tool for liberation. "Knowledge is the one thing they can never take from you," she'd often say, her voice soft but firm, as she'd read aloud from community statutes, local council meeting minutes, or even complex legal documents she'd somehow acquired. "And character with knowledge, Sam," she'd add, tapping his forehead gently, "that can truly change the world." Sam would often sit with her in their living room, a cozy space filled with the scent of old books and Estime's homemade peach cobbler. Surrounded by stacks of papers, he'd listen intently as she patiently explained intricate legal jargon in simple, relatable terms, using examples from their own neighborhood. "See, Sam, a tort is just fancy talk for someone messing up so bad they hurt someone else, and the law needs to make it right." His young mind, remarkably sharp and blessed with a near-photographic memory, absorbed every detail, every nuance. He'd ask questions that sometimes stumped even Estime, making her beam with pride. "Grandma, if a contract says this, but their actions did that," he'd once pondered, "doesn't that make the contract a lie?" Their secret education wasn't just confined to their living room. In the quiet corners of the Harmony House library, a haven of old paperbacks and hushed whispers, Sam found another unexpected mentor. Mrs. Evelyn Cross. A retired librarian with spectacles perched on her nose and a gentle, knowing smile, Mrs. Cross had once been a paralegal, rumored to have worked for a top law firm for 30 years before dedicating her twilight years to community service. She observed Sam's intense focus on the legal section, the way his small fingers traced the lines of complex case studies. She saw the same burning conviction in his eyes that she'd once seen in young civil rights lawyers. Mrs. Cross never directly taught him. Instead, she'd subtly guide him. "Sam, have you ever considered how specific wording can change an entire agreement?" she'd ask, sliding a dusty book on contract law his way. Or, "Sometimes, the strongest evidence isn't what's said aloud, but what's missing." She would point him towards specific legal precedents, case studies involving community programs, and practical strategies for presenting evidence in a clear, compelling way. She saw his raw potential, his unwavering loyalty to Estime, and his desperate thirst for justice. This wasn't just about winning a case for Mrs. Cross. It was about empowering a young mind, shaping a future champion. Mrs. Cross had even told Sam 2 weeks earlier that he had an exceptional legal mind and they needed to be strategic because they would try to disqualify him because he was a child. Armed with his grandmother's unwavering truth and Mrs. Cross's quiet guidance, Sam began to piece together the inconsistencies. He started a small, leather-bound journal, his precise child's handwriting filling its pages with dates, discrepancies, and snippets of overheard conversations. He revisited his grandmother's old, meticulously kept logs from Harmony House, filled with details of every dollar received and spent, every repair authorized, every family helped. He cross-referenced these with vague invoices and official reports he managed to obtain through subtle inquiries at the community center. This was the quiet genesis of his legal strategy, driven by intuition, fierce dedication, and a burning belief in his grandmother's innocence. Estime, meanwhile, felt the crushing weight of isolation. Despite her lifetime of service, some in the community, swayed by the relentless media narrative, began to doubt her. Their smiles became hesitant, their greetings brief. Sam was her only unwavering support, her anchor in a storm of doubt. His fierce protectiveness was a balm to her weary soul, making his mission not just critical, but absolutely vital. The clock was ticking. The court date loomed, and a predatory force, cloaked in the guise of justice, was about to step onto the stage, ready to seal Estime's fate. The Brooklyn courthouse was a monument to justice, its stone facade weathered by decades of stories, some of triumph, many of despair. Inside, however, the air was thick with something far less noble than justice. It was a palpable tension, heavy with formality, yes, but also with unspoken biases. The scent of old paper and polished wood couldn't quite mask the lingering scent of an old boys' club in full swing. This wasn't just a place where laws were interpreted. It was a stage where power played its games. Presiding over this particular drama was Judge Elias Thorne. A seasoned jurist with 30 years on the bench, Judge Thorne was known for his stern demeanor, his sharp intellect, and a generally fair, if sometimes rigid, application of the law. Yet, Even his seasoned eyes initially saw Sam as nothing more than a childish distraction, a misguided attempt at emotional theatre. His initial skepticism, a common hurdle for any voice from the marginalized, was a mountain Sam would have to climb. But the true Goliath in this courtroom was Reginald Dubois, the chief prosecutor. Elegant, 50-something, and with a meticulously adjusted, expensive tie, Dubois was a rising star in the legal world, boasting an almost mythical 95% conviction rate in financial fraud cases. Rumors whispered of his ambition, of his eyes set firmly on the district attorney's seat. Yet, beneath that polished, charismatic veneer lay a chilling arrogance, a deep-seated prejudice, and a calculating ruthlessness. To Dubois, Estime Rollins was an easy target, another statistic to boost his perfect record, another undesirable element from the projects to be neatly swept away, enhancing his image for the upcoming election. Somehow, Dubois' opening statement was a masterclass in manipulation, a narrative crafted to perfection. He painted Estime as a cunning embezzler, weaving a tale of greed with slick language and cherry-picked financial data. He spoke of missing millions with a practiced indignation, overwhelming the defense with technical jargon and complex financial reports. He even rolled his eyes in obvious irritation when Sam dared to speak. Every word was designed to solidify the predetermined narrative. A poor, uneducated black woman, inherently guilty, had betrayed her own community. It was a playbook as old as the system itself. Estime's own defense attorney, a weary public defender likely stretched thin across dozens of cases, struggled to counter this onslaught. He was playing a losing game, outmaneuvered and out-resourced, falling into every trap set by the formidable Dubois. The system, designed to be blind, often saw only what it wanted to see, especially when facing those it deemed less than. This imbalance highlighted the stark reality of how systemic disadvantages could dismantle a person's life, piece by agonizing piece. Sam watched, his small frame rigid in his seat. He felt the cold dread seep into his bones as his grandmother's future was systematically dismantled before his eyes. The weight of injustice pressed down on him, the system's indifference a suffocating blanket. His quiet frustration simmered, then ignited into a burning resolve to act, even if it meant defying every rule, every expectation. He thought of his grandmother's tired eyes, her selfless devotion. Had he sent her to the sidelines? Her selfless devotion. He couldn't let them do this to her. He wouldn't. Unbeknownst to anyone in that courtroom, Reginald Dubois carried a significant Achilles heel, far deeper than mere ambition. His high conviction rate wasn't just a mark of skill, it was a symptom of a pattern of selective prosecution, of deliberately ignoring leads that complicated his carefully constructed narratives. His political aspirations were intrinsically tied to a darker, more insidious truth. He leveraged his position for financial gain, weaving a tangled web of deceit through shell companies. This wasn't just about one old woman. It was about a deeply embedded corruption that threatened the very fabric of justice. The key to Dubois' operation was a company he called Phoenix Ventures. On paper, it was a legitimate construction firm, constantly winning bids for emergency roof repairs and security equipment at Harmony House, despite charging exorbitant prices and delivering shoddy, often non-existent work. These were the missing funds Estime was accused of embezzling, but in reality, the millions simply vanished into the pockets of Dubois and his shadowy associates. One of Dubois' key figures in this scheme was a man named Kai, a fixer who handled the truly dirty work. Sam and Mrs. Cross had stumbled upon a chilling exchange, a phone conversation from September 15th and a text message sent 3 days later, where Dubois explicitly instructed Kai to speed up this case with the old woman on welfare. It doesn't matter if she's guilty or not. My conviction rate can't drop before the Attorney General's election. The contempt in his voice was sickening. And in another chilling message, Dubois ordered, "The investigation needs to focus solely on the administrator's responsibility. I don't want any detectives wasting time checking companies or signatures. Case closed in 2 weeks maximum." This wasn't negligence. It was a deliberate, calculated cover-up. But unknown to Dubois, Sam and Mrs. Cross had been meticulously collecting evidence of these very dealings. They connected the seemingly random dots. The massive missing funds, the perpetually under-repair facilities at Harmony House, and the inexplicable large deposits appearing in Dubois's personal bank account on October 2nd, just 3 days after Esther May was charged. The money transferred from a shell company, the very same Phoenix Ventures that had supposedly done the phantom repairs. A terrifying parallelism emerged. Esther May's life was defined by meticulous, handwritten logs detailing every cent of legitimate work, while Dubois's was built on a hidden, digital paper trail of concealed deceit. One was a testament to transparent service, the other a monument to self-serving corruption. The stakes escalated with every passing moment. The defense was crumbling. Esther May looked increasingly weary, her spirit dimming under the relentless assault. Time was running out, a ticking clock counting down to the complete destruction of her life and legacy. And then Sam, unable to bear it any longer, rose from his chair. His small voice, barely a whisper yet somehow cutting through the dense air, politely but firmly asked for permission to speak. The room fell silent, the initial shock giving way to confused murmurs. Judge Thorne looked up over his glasses, a half-smile on his face, trying to be kind in the unusual situation. Dubois rolled his eyes in obvious irritation, adjusting his expensive tie with ill-concealed disdain. He saw a child, a pathetic waste of time. He had no idea the storm that was about to break. The silence in the Brooklyn courtroom was deafening, a thick, palpable tension broken only by Sam's steady breathing. Judge Thorne, intrigued despite himself, leaned forward over his glasses. He'd seen desperate pleas, but never from an 8-year-old. After a moment that stretched into an eternity, the judge ruled, "Young man, you have 5 minutes to speak, but only as a witness." A silent protest rippled from Prosecutor Dubois, who clearly saw this as a ridiculous waste of the court's time, but the judge ignored him. Dubois adjusted his tie, a sneer playing on his lips, confident this would be nothing more than cheap emotional theatre. He had no idea the earthquake that was about to shake his meticulously constructed world. Sam took a deep, deliberate breath, his small hands carefully opening a makeshift folder filled with papers and notes. The papers were organized with a precision that caught the attention of everyone present. There were newspaper clippings, photocopies of official documents, and even drawings made by the boy himself to illustrate important points. His voice, though still childlike, resonated with an unsettling maturity as he began, "Your Honor, I've lived with my grandmother since my parents died in an accident 2 years ago. She has always been the administrator of the housing program, and I always helped her check the bills every Sunday night at the kitchen table." Dubois prepared to object again, but something in Sam's determined gaze made him hesitate. It was as if this child knew exactly what he was doing. Every Sunday, Grandma Esther May would spread all the papers on the table and let me sort the receipts by color, blue for expenses, yellow for income. It was our special time together, Sam continued, his voice beginning to tremble slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. "My grandmother taught me that the truth always wins, even when it seems impossible." He maintained a posture that suggested something much deeper than a simple, desperate attempt. His eyes revealed a serenity that only exists in those who have weathered much worse storms. Sam then laid out his first set of exhibits, simple yet devastating. "Your Honor, look. On September 12, 2000, $500.00 was withdrawn from the account for emergency roof repairs at the community center." He paused, then held up a photo taken with an old cell phone. "But my grandmother took me there the next day, September 13th, and the roof was perfect. As you can see, there are no signs of recent repairs." Dubois shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had built his entire case on Esther May's technical responsibility as administrator, but hadn't bothered to investigate each individual transaction thoroughly. Sam pressed on, relentless. "On September 18th, another $1,800.00 for security equipment, but there was never any new equipment at the center. Then came the real hook. And, on September 25th, the withdrawal that caught our attention the most. $3,200.00 for outside legal counsel." Sam paused dramatically, his eyes sweeping the room. But Grandma Estime never hired any outside lawyers. She always handled legal matters herself, with the help of lawyer friends who worked pro bono. The jury members, who had begun leaning forward with curiosity, were now riveted. What started as an unusual spectacle was quickly turning into something much more serious. Sam turned to Dubois, his tone calm but cutting. "Dr. Dubois, did you verify that these companies that received the payments actually exist?" Dubois hesitated. It was a simple question, but he hadn't done this basic verification. "The investigation focused on the administrator's responsibility," he replied defensively. Sam nodded slowly, a disturbing maturity in his demeanor. "I see. So you assumed that Grandma Estime was guilty without investigating who actually stole the money?" Each question from Sam revealed glaring gaps, fundamental oversights in Dubois' investigation. The prosecutor was beginning to realize that he had completely underestimated the situation, building a superficial case based on prejudices about an elderly black woman managing public funds. But what Dubois didn't know was that every strategic question Sam asked wasn't the result of luck or childish intuition. For months, the boy had meticulously studied every aspect of the case, with a determination fueled not only by his love for his grandmother, but by the absolute certainty that the system would try to destroy yet another innocent black family. Each new revelation only strengthened something inside Sam that his oppressors couldn't see, a silent force, fueled by the very injustice they sought to impose, as if each act of contempt were writing its own sentence of defeat. "And there's something strange about these transactions," Sam continued, pulling another envelope from his folder. "They were all signed by Grandma Estime, but she never signed any of these." He showed several sheets comparing signatures. "I learned about handwriting analysis at the public library. Even a kid like me can see they're different. Look, Grandma's real signature has softer strokes, and these are done with really heavy pressure." Dubois rolled his eyes dramatically. "Now, we're going to accept handwriting analysis done by a child? That's absolutely ridiculous." "Dr. Dubois," Sam replied with impressive politeness, "do you have any professional handwriting analysis to prove that these signatures are genuine?" Dubois hesitated. This was another basic check he hadn't done. "The investigation focused on the most relevant aspects of the case," he mumbled. "I see," Sam said. "So you have no proof that Grandma Estime actually signed these documents?" As Dubois struggled to formulate a response, Sam continued with a confidence that left everyone stunned. The truth was, Sam wasn't doing it alone. For the past 2 months, ever since he had learned of the charges, the boy had turned his nights into intensive study sessions. Mrs. Evelyn Cross, the retired librarian and former paralegal, had become his secret mentor. Patricia had worked for 30 years in law firms and immediately recognized the boy's potential when he showed up at the library asking for books on legal procedure. "Sam," Mrs. Cross had said 2 weeks earlier, "you have an exceptional legal mind, but we need to be strategic in court. They're going to try to disqualify you because you're a child. You need to be 3 steps ahead of them." Together, they had developed a meticulous presentation. Mrs. Cross taught Sam about the order of evidence, how to ask questions that expose flaws in the investigation, and most importantly, how to remain calm in the face of condescending opponents. "But the most important discovery is here," Sam said, pulling out an official document. "This is a report from the bank showing that on the day the money disappeared, someone called the account at 2:30 p.m. The call lasted 15 minutes. He showed another piece of paper. "And this is the medical record from Brooklyn Methodist Hospital, proving that at that exact time, Grandma Estime was with me in the emergency room. I was having an asthma attack and she was there from 1 to 5 o'clock p.m. A murmur ran through the room. It was the first concrete and irrefutable evidence that Estime could not have made the transaction. Dubois stood up nervously. "Your Honor, these documents were not presented during the discovery phase." "Dr. Dubois," Sam replied calmly, "did you present any evidence proving that Grandma Estime was present when the money was stolen?" Another awkward silence. Dubois had built his entire case on Estime's technical responsibility, without ever verifying that she was physically present at the time of the crime. "Furthermore," Sam continued, pressing his advantage, "did you check the security cameras in the building where the Harmony House office is located?" Dubois was starting to sweat. The cameras weren't working that day, he stammered. Interesting, Sam said with calculated innocence, a slight tilt of his head. Because I called the security company last week, and they told me the cameras were working perfectly. They even offered to give me the recordings for free to help Grandma Esther May. The room erupted in murmurs. Dubois realized he was being systematically dismantled by an 8-year-old who had done basic investigative work he had neglected. How did you get this information? Dubois demanded, his voice betraying a mixture of anger and desperation. It's simple, Sam replied, his gaze unwavering. When you love someone, you do whatever it takes to protect them. I've spent the last 2 months studying this case every day after school. Esther May, who had remained silent until then, began to cry quietly. Her 8-year-old grandson was fighting for her with a determination and intelligence she had never imagined possible. Judge Thorne leaned forward, clearly impressed. Sam, how did you learn to organize evidence like this? Mrs. Cross from the library helped me, Sam explained. She worked in law offices for 30 years and said that everyone deserves a fair defense, even when they can't afford one. Dubois realized the terrifying truth. This wasn't just a desperate child trying to save his grandmother. This was a strategic duo that had investigated the case more thoroughly than his own elite team. His arrogance had become his fatal flaw. But I have one last piece of evidence, Sam said, his voice growing more serious. The most important one of all. He took a sealed envelope from his makeshift briefcase. Inside this envelope is proof of who really stole the money from the Harmony House program. Grandma Esther May and I discovered the truth, but we wanted to give the real culprit a chance to confess first. Sam looked directly at Dubois, his gaze piercing. Dr. Dubois, would you like to withdraw the charges against Grandma Esther May before I open this envelope? Dubois hesitated. His career, built on a mountain of convictions and an unshakable belief in his own infallibility, hung in the balance. Now he faced the horrifying possibility that he had accused an innocent woman based on prejudice and negligent investigation. For a moment, as Sam held the sealed envelope in his small hands, everyone in the courtroom felt they were about to witness something extraordinary. But anyone watching closely could see that it wasn't nervousness that made the boy's hands tremble slightly. It was the contained power of someone who was about to rewrite not only his own history, but that of everyone in the room. Sweat began to form beads on Dubois' forehead. I can't drop charges based on blackmail from a child, he finally stammered. Sam calmly opened the envelope and removed a digital recording. Dr. Dubois, do you remember this phone conversation from September 15th? He pressed play. Dubois's unmistakable voice echoed through the room. Tony, I need you to speed up this case with the old woman on welfare. It doesn't matter if she's guilty or not. My conviction rate can't drop before the Attorney General's election. A deafening silence fell over the courtroom. Another man's voice answered on the recording. Rick, are you sure? What if they find out we didn't investigate properly? Dubois' voice, laced with contemptuous confidence, replied. Who's going to find out? It's a poor old black woman against me. The jury's already decided before they even walk in the room. The faces on the jury contorted in expressions of shock and revulsion. Dubois turned pale, realizing that his career had just been publicly destroyed. This is inadmissible, he shouted, standing up abruptly. That recording was obtained illegally. Actually, Sam said with impressive calm, it was obtained legally. Mrs. Cross taught me about recording laws. This conversation took place on the public office phone, which has clear notices about recording for transparency purposes. Judge Thorne was visibly shaken. In his 3 decades on the bench, he had never witnessed such an exposure of procedural misconduct. Sam continued, pressing the final nails into Dubois' coffin. Dr. Dubois, do you also remember this message you sent to Tony 3 days later? He showed a printout of the text. The investigation needs to focus solely on the administrator's responsibility. I don't want any detectives wasting time checking companies or signatures. Case closed in 2 weeks maximum. Indignant murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Jurors looked at each other with expressions of disgust. Dubois' conduct was not just negligent, it was deliberately corrupt. But the most important evidence, Sam declared, holding up a bank statement, is in this document. This is Dr. Dubois's personal account statement. On October 2nd, 3 days after Grandma Esther May was charged, He received a deposit of $25,000, 0 cents, from a shell company. Dubois tried to speak, but his voice came out as a desperate whisper. "That's the same company that received some of the fraudulent payments from the Harmony House program," Sam added, looking directly at the stunned prosecutor. "You weren't just neglecting the investigation, Doctor. You were protecting your accomplices." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Dubois had fallen into his own trap. Not only had he accused an innocent woman, but he was directly involved in the corruption scheme. "Mrs. Cross taught me something important," Sam said, looking directly at Dubois. "She said that people like you always make the same mistake. You think you can step on those you consider weaker, without consequences." Esther May, who had remained silent throughout the presentation, slowly stood up. Her voice, once soft, now rang with a quiet power. "Dr. Dubois, for 15 years I have dedicated my life to helping families find decent housing. You tried to destroy that for money and political ambition." Dubois hung his head, completely defeated. His reputation, career, and political future had been obliterated by an 8-year-old he had completely underestimated. The gavel, a symbol of authority, was about to fall, not on Esther May, but on the very man who sought to condemn her. The gavel fell, not with a gentle tap, but with a resonant thud that echoed through the stunned courtroom. "Mr. Dubois," Judge Thorne's voice boomed, now stripped of its earlier skepticism and filled with a rare, potent emotion. "In addition to the charges against Esther May Rollins being immediately dismissed, I am ordering that this case be referred for investigation of prosecutorial misconduct and corruption." Dubois tried to stand, to protest, but he staggered, his arrogance morphing into sheer panic as the full weight of his downfall crashed upon him. He would not only lose the case, but he would face a criminal investigation. The perfect record he had so meticulously built was now nothing but dust. Then Sam's voice, small but steady, cut through the murmurs. "Your Honor," he said, looking out at the still shocked faces, "I want everyone to know that I didn't do this out of revenge. I did it for the love of Grandma Esther May, and because every child deserves to see that justice is possible, even when it seems impossible." The courtroom erupted in spontaneous applause. Several jurors had tears in their eyes, not just for Esther May's proven innocence, but for the powerful demonstration that intelligence and determination could overcome privilege and corruption. As the applause swelled and Dubois was escorted out by security, one question lingered in the air. Could it be that this 8-year-old boy had planted seeds of change that would grow far beyond those 4 walls, transforming not only his life, but inspiring an entire generation to believe that age, color, or background never define the size of the dreams we can achieve? The aftermath was a whirlwind, a powerful current of vindication and change. Esther May, once weighed down by the threat of false accusations, stood taller, her eyes brighter. The quiet strength that had always defined her was now amplified, a testament to her enduring spirit. She grasped Sam's hand, her smile radiant. "My little champion," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You saved me. You truly saved us." It wasn't just her freedom Sam had secured. It was her dignity, her legacy, and her very spirit he had restored. 6 months after the trial that shook Brooklyn, Sam found himself in a place he never expected, the front row of a prestigious law school in New York City. Not as a student, not yet, but as a guest speaker. At 9 years old, he had become the most famous civil procedure case study of the past 10 years. True justice, Sam told an audience of 300 future lawyers, his voice echoing with the wisdom of someone far beyond his years. Doesn't happen when you defeat someone, it happens when you protect those you love and teach others to do the same. In the front row, Esther May smiled proudly. Her health dramatically improved since the stress of the charges ended. The Harmony House Community Center, now under new, transparent management, had received record donations from people inspired by the Rollins family's story of integrity. Meanwhile, Reginald Dubois faced a starkly different reality. After a federal investigation, he was convicted of corruption, prosecutorial misconduct, and fraud. He lost his license to practice law, faced 2 years in prison, and now worked as an insurance salesman in a small town where no one knew of his shameful past. People ask me if I feel sorry for Dr. Dubois, Sam continued during his lecture. I do feel sorry for him. Sorry for someone who had so much privilege and decided to use it to hurt innocent people. Mrs. Evelyn Cross, now officially Sam's mentor through a university program, beamed from the audience. Together they had created a project that taught children from underserved communities about their basic legal rights. The Harmony Justice Initiative, soon dubbed the Sam Rollins Project by the children themselves, was now operating in 25 Brooklyn public schools, teaching hundreds of children that they had a voice and power. They simplified complex legal concepts, turning dry statutes into engaging stories, showing kids how to identify injustice in their own lives and, more importantly, how to seek recourse. They taught them about contracts, about evidence, about due process, equipping them with the very knowledge that had empowered Sam. Mrs. Cross often shared a lesson from their journey. Knowledge without character is dangerous, but character with knowledge can change the world, a sentiment echoed by the college dean during Sam's presentation. Sam's life had been completely transformed. 3 large law firms had already offered him full scholarships for when he reached college age. The national media covered his story, but Esther May, ever protective, shielded her grandson from excessive spotlight, ensuring he remained a normal child, still playing basketball at school and watching cartoons on Sundays. The case, however, ignited significant legislative changes. A bill, quickly known as the Sam Rollins Act, was passed in New York State. This groundbreaking law required prosecutors to present concrete evidence of a defendant's physical presence at the time of the crime in cases of grand larceny and financial fraud, making it far more difficult for powerful figures to pin crimes on convenient scapegoats. Other states began to consider similar legislation. It was a monumental shift, a direct response to the systemic failures Sam had exposed. At the end of his lecture, a student raised her hand. "Sam, are you going to be a lawyer when you grow up?" He paused, that familiar, thoughtful look in his eyes. I don't know yet," he replied with the same honesty he had always shown, "but I know I want to continue helping people understand that they have more power than they realize." Esther May, now recognized as Brooklyn Citizen of the Year, used her new platform to advocate for sweeping reforms in the welfare and housing systems. She was invited to join a city council overseeing social programs, ensuring transparency and efficiency. "My grandson taught me that our age does not define our wisdom," she said in interviews on national television, "and our color does not define our ability. Sometimes justice needs to be reminded of its own principle." Her voice carried weight now, the weight of a woman who had faced the system head-on and emerged victorious, thanks to the courage of a little boy. The ripples of their story were spreading far and wide. The wheels of justice, though slow, had indeed turned. Reginald Dubois, once the untouchable prosecutor, was ultimately convicted of corruption, prosecutorial misconduct, and fraud. His conviction rate, once his pride, now served as a testament to his deceit. He lost his license to practice law, faced 2 years in prison, and upon his release vanished from the legal world, finding a meager existence as an insurance salesman in a small town where no one knew of his shameful past. The man who had wielded power like a weapon was now a shadow of his former self, a stark, sobering example of how the mighty can fall when confronted by unwavering truth. Yet, even in Dubois' fall, there was a quiet undercurrent of complexity. "People ask me if I feel sorry for Dr. Dubois," Sam had told his law school audience. "I do feel sorry for him. Sorry for someone who had so much privilege and decided to use it to hurt innocent people." It wasn't pity born of weakness, but a profound sadness for a path squandered, a potential twisted. It was a lesson in empathy, even for those who had wronged them, rooted in the understanding that true victory wasn't about vengeance, but about restoration. And while justice had been served, the pain and trauma inflicted on Esther May and the Cedarwood Heights community by Dubois' actions lingered. True healing, they knew, was a process, not an event. Some wounds, Esther May had told Sam during a quiet conversation, don't need forgiveness for us to move on. They need justice, and we've got justice. It was a powerful distinction, not a grudge, but a clear-eyed acknowledgement of wrong and a resolute move forward. Sam's journey, meanwhile, was only just beginning. He remained a beacon, his quiet wisdom impressing adults across the country. A few years older now, perhaps a lanky teenager with a deepened voice, he was still passionate about justice. He often accompanied Estime on her advocacy trips, always carrying his organized binder, now famous among lawyers and law students. During one of these trips, a reporter asked Sam what his biggest lesson from the case was. "I learned that when you're right, and you don't give up," he replied, "the system can be fair, but you have to be prepared to prove you're right." Mrs. Cross, watching Sam answer questions with such maturity, later commented, "This boy didn't just save his grandmother, he restored my faith that the next generation can fix what our generation broke." The story of Sam and Estime wasn't just a local triumph. It set a precedent that other cases followed. Lawyers began citing the Rollins precedent in cases involving procedural misconduct, and law schools included their case in professional ethics curricula. It became a powerful example of due process. The difference between being a victim and being a winner, Sam always said when asked about his secret, is not what happens to you, but what you decide to do next. Grandma Estime taught me that knowledge is power, but love is courage. Reginald Dubois tried to destroy an innocent family, but ended up destroying only himself, while Sam and Estime emerged stronger, inspiring an entire generation of children to believe that their voices matter. Their story proved that age does not define ability, color does not limit potential, and that when love meets knowledge, miracles can happen, even in the most unlikely places. Sam had planted seeds of change that would grow far beyond that courtroom, transforming not only his life, but inspiring an entire generation to believe that justice is possible. This is more than just a story of a court case. It's a testament to the enduring power of truth, the transformative nature of education, the profound impact of individual courage, and the unwavering strength of family and community bonds, especially within the context of African American heritage. It reminds us that justice is not always swift, nor always easy, but it is always worth fighting for. Perhaps you felt unheard, overlooked, or even betrayed by systems that were supposed to protect you. Maybe you've watched helplessly as someone you loved faced an impossible battle. Sam Rollins reminds us that age, background, or perceived powerlessness do not define our capacity for change. The quiet observer, the dedicated grandmother, the unseen mentor all played a part in this extraordinary victory, proving that even in the deepest shadows, light can emerge from the most unlikely champions. We are stronger together, and the fight for justice is a collective endeavor, passed down from one generation to the next, just as Estime empowered Sam. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think, made you feel, then please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that challenge, inspire, and remind us of the incredible human spirit. Your support helps us amplify these crucial stories. Thank you for listening. What quiet storm is brewing within you, waiting to unleash its power? What truth are you prepared to fight for? The unwritten future belongs to those who dare to believe that justice is not just a concept, but a force waiting to be summoned.